In this episode, we're joined by a global learning and development leader responsible for AI upskilling across more than 400,000 employees in over 150 countries. We talk about what it really takes to move from AI experimentation to organization-wide adoption, how enterprises are teaching employees to build their own agents, and why personalization, governance, and practical learning matter more than hype. We also dive into the future of AI-enabled workforces, the evolution from generative AI to agentic systems, and what companies need to do today to stay competitive tomorrow. Let's get into it. Great. Thank you so much, Simon, for coming.
My pleasure.
This is a very special episode. This is our 10th episode, actually. So
Fantastic.
I really wanted to have like a top-of-mind subject for this episode and also learn more about your experience. I think many people in our audience follow your work, and it would be great to kind of share this whole, like, I would say, agentic topic that we set for today. But first, let me ask you, like, could you share some details about your current responsibilities, just how you got into the current role and the basics there?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the last 2.5 years, I've been the learning and development leader globally for EY. So responsible for making sure that across EY's 400,000 people, that we're providing the right training courses, the right learning, building the skills that we need to be able to support our clients. And it's across 150 countries. And we have a fantastic learning team that, we're heavily focused at the moment around building agentic skills of today's topic. So.
And I guess the objective changed over the last years as the whole agentic aspect of AI has evolved. Right now, when we briefed about this episode, you mentioned that you've been gathering quite many surveys about usage of AI across organizations. Could you share us some details how you kind of evolved your main objectives over time, over the last years, and what it is now?
Yeah, so EY did some research recently looking at usage of AI. It's called our Work Reimagined survey that people can find the details online, and some fascinating data in there. So we were seeing that 88% of people were using AI regularly, which was great to see. This is across about 1,500 organizations, but only about 5% were actually using them at an advanced level of using multiple AI tools on a regular basis. But those that were using it at an advanced level were unlocking a day and a half or so of productivity a week. Interestingly, from a learning perspective, is that on average, those sort of super users or power users who were doing sort of 80 plus hours of learning in order to be able to unlock the skills to be able to get those benefits from AI. So that leads us to sort of making sure that we're providing great learning to people within EY to be able to build out those skills. And we've got a whole range of different solutions that we can talk about of how we build out those skills.
Yeah, it's truly fascinating, given the scale and also the complexity of the problem.
Yeah.
What I wonder is, right now, what I see within organizations is the mandate to drive automation with agents.
Mm-hmm.
So as you also mentioned, that must be a main focus area. Can you explain to us how you kind of started this whole project? What was your mandate within the organization? What was needed to be solved, and how was this prioritized?
Yeah, I mean, across 400,000 people, there's very different needs around AI learning. So we have to segment our audience into different needs. So we have, what does the entire organization, all 400,000 people need? What do we want to target, for example, for our leaders as they're sort of driving influence over our AI skills? Where do we want to focus on particular populations? So maybe those more involved in the coding and engineering side, where we need to build out those deeper skills. So we've got a range of different solutions. Mm-hmm. But if we look at the ones that sort of span across the whole organization, so we started a few years ago with what we called AI Now, and that was an introduction to what is AI. So to your sort of evolution of it, it was really just an awareness of when we talk about AI and what are we talking about, why is it important, why do we need to pay attention. That was a voluntary training, went out to the whole organization. It's the most popular training we've ever had. 350,000 people went through it, 90% of the organization, so phenomenal uptake. And so that's provided that awareness piece. To then build on that, as the technology evolved, we then sort of moved into generative AI, and we rolled out AI Now 2 a year ago. That was around Gen AI as a thought partner. And in that, we took people through how they could use AI as a thought partner, and in the context of actually how their own role would evolve. So it put in details to the AI around what their role was, what they would do on a day-to-day basis, and then had a conversation with the AI around what that might change over time. So that was our second one, and that's had phenomenal uptake as well across the 2 modules, over 500,000 completions now. And then we've just, in the last few weeks, released the latest iteration of that. And to your point on the evolution, now it's looking at agentic AI, and I think this is a world first. So this is rolling out to 400,000 people, an agent to teach people how to build agents. So,
Very exciting.
yeah. So you go in, there's a sort of short tutorial introduction, but then you'll then come to talk to the agent, and the agent works with you to identify what would be a great use case for you to build your own agent. So something to help me review my emails or organize my calendar or whatever that may be. And it then takes you through step by step how you build that agent to do exactly what you need. So by the end of the training, you've actually hands-on built your own agent. You then have that to work with afterwards. So yeah, the feedback on it so far is phenomenal. We've had 20,000 people go through it already, and yeah, people are seeing it as a very different way of learning, of actually having the agent teach them. Yeah.
How would you define agent?
So in this context, I guess it's a structured AI program, I guess, essentially, which has a set of goals and things that it needs to achieve. It has a set of skills, so it understands how to present information. It understands the process for how to create an agent using the tooling that we have, and it then guides the user through those, but it does it in a tailored way to the individual user, but also in a structured way, because it has to cover certain pieces. So if we imagine a training course has our sections, our modules, and it's very clear where you are within that. In an agent conversation, that's much harder because it's a free-flowing conversation. So this was one of the challenges we found in actually building it, is it needs to be sufficiently freeform that the user can guide it to whatever they want to build, but it also needs to cover certain points. It needs to make sure that the user creates what's the need, what do they need to put into their new agent that they're building, what are the constraints they need to put in, etc. So it has to have structure, but it also has to have the freedom to be personalized, and it has to work across the variety that we have in the organization as well.
And how have you solved the personalization? For example, did you deploy this for like 20,000 people in very similar disciplines? I can imagine if there are like various types of roles which are applying different sort of skills, it's hard for this agent to recommend the best tactics or approaches to build automations and agents themselves, right?
Yeah, and that was part of the challenge in the design. So it is one instance of it that works for everybody. So it's got sufficient variation in how it interacts. And one of the big things is language. So people can switch it, talk to it in a different language, and the whole thing will then be done in their local language. And so that involved testing as well to see actually does it behave the same across different languages in the things that we need to do, etc. So it does allow that personalization, but there's a lot of testing in there. There's a lot of careful design to make sure it covers all of those things.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's good. It's really good that it can like cater all this personalized approach, because that can give more impactful recommendations and based on my understanding.
Definitely.
And related to this still, how have you managed to tackle like primarily the IT security aspects of it? All the guests who I speak with, they always like manage expectations around how difficult that is. I can imagine it's such a vast organization. It must have been like difficult, or are we living now in a different time and enterprise adoption is slowly turning different? Or
yeah, no, I think doing something at scale globally is always complex. So going into it, in principle, to spin up an agent that takes you through a step-by-step process is a relatively simple piece, and probably within a day someone could create a simple version of it, but then that's not going to work at scale across 400,000 people with all of those use cases, with all of the tracking, etc., that we need in there. So this was a sort of 6-7 month endeavor, and making sure then that you've got all of the data privacy in there, that it behaves in an ethical way in terms of how it responds to different things. We have to sort of test it in many different ways. It's running on our internal architecture, so from a security perspective, it's fully secure, but we need to then make sure it conforms to all of the things that we need to be able to run it internally. So there's a huge amount of testing, and even things like then load balancing of it at the end. So when we launch it, if we launch it to 400,000 people and everyone goes in instantly, then are we going to have the capacity? So we end up sort of staggering the deployment over several weeks to make sure that we're not having too much hit on the server at once. You get into token costs, so which is the underlying models, but there's different costs between if you run it on that versus earlier models. So we had to look at the performance across different models, etc. But then also the speed of response, because if it takes too long to respond, then that's also a problem. So there's all of these things that need to be factored in.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the overall business KPI or objective that you are trying to measure, like how would you approach that, or what was kind of the overall goal there? Is it like sort of activation rate among the people who take this experience, that whether they can build their agents afterwards themselves, like one agent, or how does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, the goal with this one is that people have got an awareness of what agents are, but also the comfort and the confidence to actually experiment and play. So by the end of it, people have built their own agent. So it's given people the process to follow, but also the confidence that actually I can play with this and I can now fine tune my agent. And if it's not doing what I want, I can go in and do it. If I have a different idea, I can go in and build that agent. So yeah, the goal is giving that awareness, but also the confidence that people know how. And I guess overall, our goal is to make sure that we're upskilling the organization in AI skills across the board. And so, as well as things like this, we also have AI badges. So they're curated learning paths that at a minimum is like 15 hours of curated learning, with then it's not just complete the learning, you have to then show how you apply that into your day-to-day job in order to get the badge.
So the actual agents that you build.
So one of those is, for example, agentic AI. So that's sort of a 15-hour curated learning path around going deeper into how to build out agents. And we've had 100,000 people go through those badges now. Another 100,000 or so are actually in progress. So that's been an amazing way of building much deeper skills. And to your sort of how do you measure it? If we look at the data across that, we have the highest volume of AI skills. We also have the highest amount of advanced and intermediate AI skills, and we're also building AI skills at a faster rate than anyone else. So that gives us some concrete benchmarking in terms of actually it's working in terms of building out those skills.
And so far, based on what you're seeing, what are like typical agents people have built after taking this experience?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at my own one, it's around access to my emails, and then review of emails and coming up with suggestions on drafts, etc., etc. So at the moment, a lot of it is personal productivity agents. There's a much more complex process to building agents that are used by the organization, and this is with individual data, but anything with client data, etc. There's a whole governance process, etc., around how we build and publish those agents. So there's different tiers, I guess, of the sophistication of agents, and this is at the most basic agent level, I guess, of a personal productivity agent.
Yeah. But it's also, I would say, if you start with such easier projects, you can ramp it up quickly and tackle more medium and harder ones as you see the value. So
very much,
that's a great design principle as well. Teaching people. What are some of the learnings in terms of like building this whole agent, like that others could learn from? Like, what were some of the points of I would say learnings which others could apply when they tackle something similar?
Yeah, I think being ambitious in what we try to achieve, first of all, because I think when we went into this, and it was one of my team, Guy Dickinson, who's led this project, and I think when we first said we want to create an agent to go out to 400,000 people, the feedback was, that's going to be very complicated to do something that actually works globally, gets approved, across the world, that will work for everyone across all the different, to your point, all the different roles and nature of it. But we pushed on and said, no, actually, we felt this would be a valuable thing to do. So I think firstly is not being put off by, this is going to be hard, this is going to be complicated. The intent was to have it in 3 or 4 months. It probably took us 6 or 7 in the end. So it took a lot longer than planned. As you go into then the complexity of, it's to the earlier point, it's not as simple as if you were just creating it for yourself to do something that scales across all those geographies, across all those people with that that volume of users, etc. It starts to become a lot more complicated. So building in sufficient time, all of the data privacy, legal, all of those elements also always need to be factored in, and also takes time. So I think persistence and seeing a bold goal and sticking to it and pushing through would be key lessons through, and recognizing these things are always more complicated than perhaps they first seem. Yeah,
absolutely. And what's the next phase for this project?
So we're still early. I mean, we launched it in the last few weeks. It's getting iterated already, so we get feedback from people going through it, and we're already making sort of tweaks to improve how it operates and make the experience even better as we go through. So I think it will be constant iteration, fine tuning of it. And then, what comes next? So we've seen that evolution from general awareness to interacting with a chatbot around Gen AI and thought as a thought partner. Now we're into agents and agent building. What's the next step? Is it building out an agentic team? Is it deeper working with an agent? It'd be very interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I was wondering if people already operate like 1, 2 of their own agents across the workforce. How can you make them even further? How can you enable them further in terms of competitiveness, in terms of like being up to date? So possibly even more advanced technological advancements that will come through over the next months, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have I think 50,000 agents now, something like that, in use across the organization. So and to varying levels of sophistication, from those personal productivity ones up to very sophisticated agents doing work. So it's making sure that people know when to use those, how to use those responsibly, how to make sure that we're validating the output that comes from them, etc.
Yeah. So far we've been talking about more of a horizontal focus across the entire workforce. Can you imagine that there is like an objective in terms of like upskilling a specific domain or specific department where the business impact can be the larger? Like, is it common in your role?
Yeah. So, sort of to the piece at the start around the different audiences of, so you've got everyone, you've got leaders, you've got particular workforces. So if we take the horizontal slice of leaders, we've got then different programs of how we build out leader knowledge around AI. We've also recently changed our leadership, what we call our all-in leadership expectations, which is what the behaviors we expect of our leaders, and that has around embracing AI, it has around curiosity, it has around psychological safety, etc., as being key traits to have in place, key behaviors to support AI. But then if you go into the vertical piece, we have, for example, AI skills for consulting. So for us consulting workforce, there's then a series of sort of 40 or so 50 curated learning programs that are specifically for that audience. In our tax organization, we built out an agent building program for tax, so specifically how to work with, there's a lot of data in the tax world, how to build out that. And then we have, as you go even narrower in terms of specific roles, we have things like programs on how you build synthetic data or AI-ready data and other pieces. So across the board, sort of very specific learnings for different elements. We have Canvas is our audit platform, and within that's starting to have AI capabilities. So there's been a huge upskilling program from the team there around how to use the AI capabilities that sits within that platform in the right way. So,
and do you have initiatives for measuring I would say, AI skills themselves. What I mean is, recently I listened to a podcast from I think it was the chief product officer of Ramp, where they introduced like this leveling program for identifying who needs help and how the company can help in terms of upskilling themselves from basically just the ChatGPT search functionalities to the autonomous team members, so 4 levels in between. And then apply different approaches for each, and also support programs. Is this something that you also done in the past, or you are considering?
We look at some of that benchmarking data. So I guess that gives us a view in terms of the different proficiency levels that we have across the organization. We're not doing sort of individual assessments of AI skills, because there's also that very different need across the different workforces as well. So some people will be using predominantly an enterprise tool that has AI built into it. Other people will be actually using a lot of the vibe coding tools or whatever to be building bespoke things themselves. So it's very, very different levels that are needed. So I think it's making sure then that we have the learning solutions that are available to people for their particular needs, for their roles, that we're giving personalized learning recommendations to people, etc.
One of my final questions about this agent is the evaluation process, because we are building agents ourselves as well, and that's a particularly hard bit. Do you have some learnings to share on that front? Because whenever you do these changes and you want to maintain quality, you switch between models, like that has to be built out really well.
So the team have done a fantastic job in going through and making sure that it is coming up with the results that we need, that it's it's controlled enough in the answers, but also flexible enough within the answers. And so before launching it, we'd done extensive testing across the world in order to make sure that it was coming up with the types of response that we needed, and that those evals were giving what we expected in terms of the way that it behaved. So, and also pushing it with from how will it behave with things that one wouldn't expect to be in there normally, etc., to try to break it. And so far they didn't manage to break it, which is reassuring.
Really great to hear. All right, that's great to hear. Like, because there is also this sentiment in the industry that it's still hard to trust AI and its results, but through such methodologies, you can reinforce the result better. And it's great to hear that at scale, how it can be orchestrated. And tell me, how are you using agents in your day-to-day? Like, if I heard correctly, maybe you applied it beyond work as well?
So I have my work experiment with an agentic team that I've built out. So I got about 30 agents that in a vibe coded agent operating system that I built at work. So I use that for a lot of experiments. You can put them into workflows and test them out, sort of to build out basic e-learning content, etc. They're very useful for thought leadership. So you can choose a set of different roles, put them in a sort of round table with a question, and they'll debate and discuss and produce a document or an infographic or a PowerPoint or whatever at the end of it. So that's a lot of experimentation. And whenever it's like, oh, can they do this? You go in and just vibe code to get them to do something different. So that's my sort of playground to see the art of the possible, and give them skills and memory and feedback and all of these elements. With my daughter, who was 16 at the time, we built out a site called My Shelfie, which she's an avid reader, and you can take a picture of your bookshelf and the AI will read all the books on it and then pull down the covers and the descriptions, and you create a virtual version of your bookshelf. So we did that together as an app that we built out. So a lot of playing to see what's possible and what can AI actually do.
I guess it helps a lot for your actual role and
completely. I mean, a lot of those things in my personal life, then you come back into the corporate environment and it's like, okay, can we do this? And it's like, oh yeah, because I played with that at home, actually that becomes possible. And so then you realize maybe what you can and can't do, and usually it's what it can do, because it's usually so powerful. There's a way to find a way to do it. That I find that super useful as my own learning experience, to then be able to bring back the principles of what I've played with outside, to then apply that into to how we work.
This sort of council setup is something I implemented recently as well.
Oh yes,
for decision making. it consumes a lot more tokens. At the
Yes.
same time, the perspective it provides is slightly different. So it automatically assigns seats
Yep.
for like different perspective personas based on
Yep.
the problem you're tackling.
Yes.
And there's go ahead and debate and
Yep.
come back. I think maybe Andrej Karpathy had this research recently that kind of
Yep.
introduced this model.
It's a great way to do it, and particularly if you have those different personas. So across the sort of 30 different agents I've got, so there's a futurist one in there. So that's sort of looking very much to it's done research on where things are going or whatever, and it brings that memory and that research into its point of view. There's one I call the agitator, and so that has a sort of contrarian point of view, and it has a sort of what if we did this 10x rather than sort of 10% or whatever. So that's sort of the provocative, trying to disrupt the thinking, and then a whole range of sort of more day-to-day type roles. But yeah, you put those together, and yeah, they don't always get it right, but what I find super useful is it gives you then a whole bunch of ideas, and you can then look through and say, oh yeah, I thought of that one and that one, but I hadn't thought of that one. Actually, that's a really good idea, so I can take that on board. So it's great as a way to help think things through rapidly. Yeah.
And in your professional life, what has been the most impactful implementation that helped you the most, I guess, in effectiveness?
I think there's such a range, I guess. I mean, all the way through from that for sort of ideas and things, but even practical day-to-day things like that. Find it's super valuable. But yeah, I mean, the agent team is probably the one I use quite a lot for.
And do you have automations which run at scheduled time that work for you or something like that?
On my home one, I do, not on my work one. But yes,
I found that it's a bit harder to build because you really have to inspire to find those use cases. I built a lot of these like runnable executions or projects myself too, but they just don't run by themselves.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the next step, I guess, and that's where I think the open claw stuff is sort of that autonomous agent that is sort of running all the time and taking actions on our behalf. So,
but also I think that connects to what you mentioned around the workforce upskilling in terms of building agent autonomous teams. So maybe that's like a more advanced level that the industry can tackle and upskill the workforce in.
Yeah, and I mean, if we look at the sort of the very sort of forefront of where this is the direction, where if we all had 1,000 agents with all the roles and skills that we need, and they can work for us sort of overnight, then how much more productive could we all become? What's the incredible more value and things that we could create? So I think it starts to be very exciting around how we can use those agent teams to achieve more.
And what's your perspective on the job security aspect? What the industry is trying to answer?
I spend a long time thinking about it. I haven't solved it, unfortunately. I see that roles will definitely change. We see the very different opinions between the sort of the huge impact it will have on taking away jobs through to actually it will create abundance and create all these new jobs. I definitely see new jobs coming. So, example earlier of things like synthetic data. So there was never a role in the past of building synthetic data. Now we're training up people to be experts in synthetic data. All of these roles around building agents, etc., didn't exist before. So I see new roles coming, but I also see roles changing where we're expecting more from some of our more junior roles. So we're trying to take people faster up to be able to take on more sophisticated activity. Some of the AI tools are allowing people to move from maybe more transactional work up to more sophisticated work earlier. So we're watching very closely in terms of what's happening there.
I wonder what are you planning to utilize synthetic data for, like generally, like for what aspect of AI?
What are we using synthetic data for? So for demonstrating how agents will work, often it can take a long time to get access to real data, particularly working with client data, etc. Whereas we can simulate that data and then be able to show how an agent can operate on synthetic data that would look very similar to what would be the end data, but you can sort of spin that up very quickly to be able to show or train the agent as well. So sometimes the restrictions that are there on data, privacy on data, etc. It's much easier to start with synthetic data than it is to start with the real data.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I guess one of the most important bits that I also wanted to touch upon was related to like upskilling yourself. So people with similarly busy schedules as you, like, what's your recommendation? Like, how can someone get started, both in terms of the theoretical realm of possibilities and also the practical bits that we touched upon?
Yeah, I think a big piece is getting hands-on and actually playing with these tools. So I mean, that's probably the biggest single source of learning, to know what's real and what's not. And a bit to the sort of what's going to be the impact of all of these things. There are so many competing views on what will happen. For me, the only way of really understanding that is to get on and see actually what's really possible with these tools. What are they good at? What are they not good at? How do the models change each time they come out? So I think just hands-on playing, experimenting, trying things out, being curious around what can be done is huge. Podcasts is a big way that I learn, both doing my own Curious Advantage podcast, but also through listening to podcasts. And so Moonshots is one that I listen to a lot. There's a whole host of podcasts. So if I'm traveling, if I'm even the weekend out in the garden, I'll have the headphones in and I'm listening to a podcast to try and keep up to date with where the latest pieces are, and then learning from my peers, from my team. That's a great way to keep up to date with what people are doing, what's working. What have people thought of that we haven't, or what can we learn from what others are doing? So there's various sort of peer network groups that I belong to, or through spending time with the team to understand how different things are being applied. So many different ways.
What I've been thinking about recently is the flow of information, and the change in the world is just accelerating so much that maybe you need to actually utilize AI to do the research instead of you. Then come back with a synthesized result, because it's just so much. That's what we've been discussing internally as well. Like, maybe that's going to be the future sooner or later.
Having your sort of a daily agent review of the latest news, the latest things to pay attention to. So, and certainly in terms of condensing information down. So if you have the sort of 30-page report that's super interesting but not time to read through it, then drop that into an AI that turns it into a 15-minute podcast that you can interact with and ask questions and whatever. So I think ways of efficient learning and efficient finding of what to pay attention to.
But I guess this relates to what we discussed before, which is not just teaching and showcasing examples for individuals, how to condense information the right way and how not to, I would say share too much context even. But also the same for the technological piece, like how can you enable your systems to follow that principle.
And knowing when to be skeptical of what you're hearing as well. So there is still hallucination within the models, and knowing when to challenge, when to go deeper, make sure we're checking what we're hearing, and that's a key skill to have as well. So
thanks so much, Simon. Where can people follow your work?
Variety of things. LinkedIn is probably the best way to keep it to date. I try and share what we're doing as a team, and by all means get in touch with me through that. I have my podcast Curious Advantage, where we also talk to some fascinating people on many different topics around curiosity, but AI is one recurring one as well. So
great. Thanks so much. Really appreciate the chance that we had today to talk and discuss this topic. And I'm keen to follow the progress in the project and hear great achievements from the entire EY workforce.
I'll let you know how we get on.
Thanks.
Cool.
This was an incredibly insightful conversation with Simon Brown on what enterprise AI adoption actually looks like at scale. From personalized AI agents to global AI learning programs, it's clear that we're entering a new phase where AI becomes deeply integrated into everyday work. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, follow us on our social channels, and share this episode with someone interested in AI, learning, or the future of work. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.